From the most trusted names in local news, KDPG Sunday Edition.
Good morning and welcome to the KDPG Sunday Edition. I'm Ken Rice. Outsiders might know Pittsburgh as the Steel City, the city of bridges, or the city of champions, but we know it as a city of neighborhoods. And among our unique neighborhoods, the collection of shops, warehouses, and eateries that make up the Strip District. The Strip is seeing more construction, more new projects, more change than any other neighborhood in the city. It's economic development, businesses, jobs, and homes that didn't exist before. But this also means some growing pains for an area that's beloved by Pittsburghers of all kinds. Before we get to our discussion, a report from Shelby Cassesi on a Thursday night open house that focused on all the change in the Strip.
Over 100 people were at Thursday's town hall in the Strip District, some voicing their concerns about the impact construction is having on their neighborhood.
And as they keep repurposing buildings and providing new construction, that's going to be happening all over the place. And so I just asked tonight, how long is that going to be happening? For 10 years, 5 years? Nobody seems to know.
Mark Rudolph is trying to determine if he wants to live in the Strip District permanently, but he says he's not convinced.
Do I want to be surrounded by construction and disruption for the next 10 years? I don't think I do.
Some of those major projects include 3 crossings, a 20-acre mixed-use space by Oxford Development Company, and a 21-story building where Woolies' cold storage facility used to be. Parking remains a key issue, and city leaders say they're working on it.
We've looked at shuttles. We've looked at talking to the developers if they can open their garages for extended periods of time. They can work with some of the business owners, maybe to work on some employee plans for their employees. Those are things that we are all in the works on right now.
Something we're doing about parking is not working. How can there be 7,000 to 8,000 new parking spaces and yet people can't park to get to your small businesses? That is what we have to change.
But some business owners say the problem isn't as big as it seems, and they're concerned the neighborhood is getting a false image.
It is the spot to be, and there is parking. You got to work a little bit harder to find it. You might have to walk an extra block, but there's still parking here. The streets that are closing, relax.
Shelby Cassesi reporting this morning on the KDPG Sunday Edition, a man you saw in that report who spends a lot of time promoting businesses and development in the Strip. Matthew Napper is president and board chair of the nonprofit Strip District Neighbors. I'm also joined by Jerry Miko, senior assistant managing editor for the Post-Gazette. Matthew, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Who are you? Who does your group represent? And tell us about your connection to the Strip over the years.
Okay, so I'm Matthew Napper. I'm president of Strip District Neighbors. We represent merchants, residents, and developers that are taking place in the Strip District right now. I've worked in the Strip District for 14 years for West Banco Bank. So I've had my hand in the community for over 8 years as a part of the community organization. Recently, in the past year and a half, I've stepped in as president of that community organization. And one thing that we have certainly seen over the past year and a half is an increase in development, and especially it's happening at a high rate of speed, and it's something that's very accelerated right now.
Yeah, no, it's truly startling. So you speak for the merchants on Penn Avenue as well as McCaffrey, which is redoing the produce terminal, and Oxford and other developers, or no?
We try to be the voice of everybody. And sometimes being the voice of everybody doesn't necessarily suit everybody, but we try to look at the most, inline situation to where we can try to make as many people happy as possible. And we do know the uniqueness of Penn Avenue, what Penn Avenue means to Pittsburgh and what Penn Avenue means to the Strip District. But we also understand that there is a lot of land that is currently available in the Strip District for development, and we need to be forward thinking and see the future of the Strip District as well, and not just look at the past.
So I know what I love about the Strip District. What do you like and love about it?
I love its uniqueness. The Strip District has that special kind of Pittsburgh grit to it. It's like almost stepping back in time. It's not like going to your usual Giant Eagle or one of your strip malls that you've seen pop up here to go shop. It's somewhere that you can walk around and it feels like you're walking through a time capsule of Pittsburgh history and tradition. That is something that I really, really just love about the Strip District.
So for a long time, those unique merchants, those wholesalers, those warehouse owners, their neighbors were other merchants, other warehouse owners, other wholesalers. But now their neighbors are Uber and Argo AI and Google and Facebook, not Google, but they're in East Liberty, but Facebook, Apple. How can the Strip maintain that uniqueness, that charm when the big guys, the behemoths are moving in? And of course, that's going to affect property values.
That one thing is Penn Avenue can maintain its uniqueness based on just how Penn Avenue has been over the years. Everybody knows it's a tradition to go down there. With the larger developments coming in, we look at these as a complement, because with those developments come employees. With those employees come opportunities for people to shop and to frequent the Strip District and just to become advocates of the Strip District. We understand that these developments may cause rising property values, but with anything else like that you see in the city, this is development that's happening all over the place. This isn't just a Strip District problem, this is a Pittsburgh problem. This is something that is going on frequently within the city, so we're seeing an expanded and an increased rate of, here again, development in the city.
Sure.
I think change is important, and I think you're seeing it all over the city, Strip District being maybe the biggest one right now. But how do you keep that charm of Penn Avenue when you know in 5 years, 10 years, who knows, as those larger developments start to surround it, that people aren't going to want to come in and say, hey, I want to put a nice, brand new looking restaurant or store here, and that's going to change the look. There's no guarantee, right? I mean, it's what happens when change comes.
With anything else, change does, bring positive and negative things. But what we have to do is we have to make sure that people are still aware of what the uniqueness of the Strip District is, and that we market it that way as not only a community organization, but as a community as a whole. And as these developers come in, we want to make sure that they're complementing what is currently there, and not just coming in and just dropping a development in that would not be complementary to something that would be in the Strip District.
How do you do that? I mean, what's the way that you do that? Do you tell someone who's investing a lot of money in a district that, hey, there's some limitation to it also? They all know they get some, but this is like a cultural thing or a charm thing, if you will, that you're asking them, hey, leave this for us.
Correct. We frequently meet with developers. The developers have been very open to us. They have gotten feedback from ourselves. They will get feedback from the community. Last night, as you saw in the previous news segment, we opened these up to town hall discussions. And in those town hall discussions, we not only have some of the stakeholders of the Strip Districts, the long-term merchants, residents, and everybody else that are able to give feedback to these developers. Now, granted, we can't control everything that goes on with a site that is privately held by a developer. But what we can do is we can give them the proper feedback to what we would like to see as a community, and then we can also alert the community that this project is going to zoning, and if they have any objections to it, they're able to go to zoning and able to fight these things.
Would your group take a stance on a national chain that expressed interest in moving to Penn Avenue?
We do not want to see a national chain on Penn Avenue. As far as someone that is running out their property, we cannot stop somebody from actually running their property to who they choose to rent their property to. But from my standpoint, and speaking for myself, the last thing we want to see in the Strip District is a national chain.
There was a Starbucks. It didn't last. There was a McDonald's for years, and people are trying to figure out, well, why did the McDonald's leave? It's sort of on the end of the Penn Avenue Strip.
Yeah, we were unaware of why the McDonald's potentially left. A lot of hearsay is out there right now. But would you rather go to McDonald's, or would you rather go to Roland's? Would you rather go to Cafe Raymond? Would you rather go to Luke Woolley's? You would rather go get food that is just unique to that neighborhood. And especially, McDonald's probably went out of business. If you're across the street from Gaucho, I mean, you're not going to have much of a chance.
But they're moving downtown.
They are moving downtown. That is very good for them. It's exciting to see. It was great to have them in the Strip District for years.
So when you look at the future of the Strip, do you really see it 10 years from now as a booming tech, robotic, entrepreneurial zone, and Penn Avenue as it exists today enduring?
Absolutely. I do see that as that.
That can be done.
It can be done. Everybody can coexist. The staples are still the staples. The people are still going to go to PennMac. The family traditions are still going to be in place. We know that there's going to be a lot more development coming down the pipeline, but we hope to see that this development can coexist with the Strip District and its uniqueness.
Are you getting a lot of newer people there? You're going to have a lot of condominiums, apartments, whatever. You're going to have folks maybe who are newer, probably younger in some cases, move in. And again, you're looking in a crystal ball, and none of us have one, but we'll take a wild guess.
We can flip a coin right now on what's going to happen.
Exactly, right. They may look around and say, yeah, I know this was charming 60 years ago, but you know what? I want my Starbucks. Where the heck's the Olive Garden, right? So, I mean, you know what I'm saying?
I think the people
there's
that
no way
to move to the Strip District don't move to the Strip District because of those amenities like a Starbucks or a McDonald's or a chain restaurant is there. They are moving there because of the uniqueness of that neighborhood and the uniqueness that those shops bring to that neighborhood. And when I speak to the residents of that community, that is the main thing that they say to me is, I moved to the Strip District because of Penn Avenue. And they want to be able to walk to all their favorite shops.
You walk a delicate line in your job. You have developers, residents, businesses. How do you do that?
You just have to learn how to balance it. And it is not an easy job. It is something that, you know, when you look at a development coming in, you have to think to yourself. And we as a board have to kick these things around multiple times before we actually come to a vote on anything, or if we were going to do a letter of support for something like this. It is not an easy job to do. And it is something where we know what we want to see as a community. We know that we need Penn Avenue to be there, but we also need development to survive as a community.
Do you look to the experience of other Pittsburgh neighborhoods for lessons? Shadyside comes to mind. People, before I ever was aware of what was going on there, people tell me that there used to be a lot of independent, unique to the city businesses up and down Walnut Street, and then eventually national chains moved in. The South Side, on the other hand, has been a very popular neighborhood for years, and it's maintained more of a unique, a little less developed, less commercialized in terms of national chain retail. How has the South Side done it where Shadyside has gone a different route?
I cannot speak to those community organizations. I mean, but I have worked with Lawrenceville, in the past, because they're obviously right up the street from the Strip District. And you ask them questions like, how do you keep Butler Street? Because you do not see a lot of national chains on Butler Street. You see a lot of independently owned, unique businesses. How do you keep that going? Like, what are some of the processes you work with the city on to do these things? So
give us an example, one or two. What are you hearing?
The examples are, you look at, like, as far as from a housing standpoint, you look at inclusionary zoning, which is you put in a map or a grid of a zone of areas that you want to make sure that they maintain a low to moderate income neighborhood. And then you also look at how, and also Lawrenceville has a very good process in place too. Whenever a business is coming into that neighborhood, they thoroughly vet that business. And I've reached out to them in the past for some of their paperwork to say, okay, what are you coming here for? Is this a bar? Is this a restaurant? Are you going to support the community? Are you going to be a part of the community? Those are things that you talk to these businesses about before they come in. And so that's some of the examples that I've gotten from Lawrenceville.
We heard about parking, a very big issue for those retailers. We heard about it at the open house on Thursday night. It's not enough to have parking in the area for some retailers because they're selling groceries. They want people to come in and walk out with 4 or 5 bags of groceries and then not have to walk 3 blocks to their car. So they want parking on Penn Avenue. They want parking, they're going to be missing a lot of parking that existed on Smallman, but that's going to go away now with the McCaffrey development at the produce terminal and then 1600. So, which is just across the street. What do you tell those businesses, say Penn Mac, who want parking and they want it close by? Affordable parking.
What I would tell Penn Mac is hopefully with what is being developed down there, and we are seeing that these developments are going to bring parking garages. And the goal is to work with these developers and to work with the city for affordable solutions, so that way if these garages are open on the weekends to the public, which we have been told by the developers and everybody else that is putting these garages in, that they will leave them open on the weekends for people to frequent and park, so that way it can alleviate a little bit of the grocery carrying for 3 or 4 blocks, and make it still in a reasonable walking distance to these shops. Also, what we can implore a lot of people to do is work with Uber and Lyft and anybody else like that, to where people, if they are going to go shop down there, they can have someone just pull right up in front of their store and they can just drop their bags right in the trunk.
Jerry, any last thing? We're just down to a minute or so.
You mentioned the city briefly there. So what's their role been in this? When you look at it through your organization's eyes, city done enough, not enough?
I feel the city hasn't really done enough. We've worked with them. I know the city is going through a lot of changes right now. We would love to see more action from the city, especially with shuttle services, the city getting involved with, with their Department of Mobility and Infrastructure. We'd like to see DOMI more involved. They have some street studies coming out. We want to make sure that we keep the city involved, but keeping the city involved sometimes could be a little bit tough.
What's just a few seconds, what's the most important thing? One single thing the city could do for the Strip?
The one single thing the city could do for the Strip District is limit street closures, and not street closures based on construction, but street closures based on events, especially events that focus around the holiday time or Small Business Saturday. We have reached out to the city multiple times for them to not stage parade routes on Liberty Avenue with the construction that has been happening in the Strip District with the developments. That is one of the major things the city could truly help us on right now, because that will alleviate a lot of the stress of people driving to the Strip District to frequent the businesses they would like to right now.
Progress. There's always some for it and some wary of it. We wish you all the best as you navigate that.
Thank you.
Matt Napper from Strip District Neighbors. All right, coming up, an interview with Pennsylvania House Speaker Mike Turzai as he prepares to leave state government when the KDPG Sunday edition continues.